Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Serko.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. We have no presentations or awards. No one signed up for personal appearances, so we'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make a staff report for Development Services.
Thank you, sir. Several items this evening to go through. I just wanted to first comment on the end of the year construction activity for 2019. We ended up issuing permits for 139 new residential dwelling units in the city. All of those but 26 units in Oak Ridge Farms, which are the new duplexes behind the post office. All the remaining ones were single-family units. And that number is down from 2018. We had almost 200 in 2018, but hopefully construction activity picks up in 2020. We have several commercial projects that are getting close to starting. One of them, the Lofts at Fockers apartment community, has started. Most of you have probably driven by and seen the activity. A lot of underground utilities being installed. They're getting all the pads, sites ready to start building construction, and they're hopefully, once the weather turns a little bit, they'll actually be putting in all the parking lot areas to provide access to all the different building pad sites they have. And we are finalizing the building construction plans. I know they're anxious to get started on vertical construction. The Compass Health Facility should be doing some site work very soon. We've been in discussions with them. They're going to come in and do their site grading, the clearing of the property they need for their 40,000 square foot office building they intend to construct. Again, we're finalizing those construction plans. They want to move quickly on that building. And we had a good meeting with Van Trust Development last week, where they will be doing their site clearing to start construction work on the extension of Dean Avenue and the water and sewer line infrastructure that needs to be put in to service future industrial development on their site. Another project, hopefully will be starting soon, will be the Westgate Drive. This is the relocated Kentucky roadway. All the closing on the acquisition of the right-of-way will occur tomorrow. And then we anticipate the city going to bid for the project here during the month of, hopefully during the month of January into February, with construction activity projected to start March, April timeframe. The developer of the Galleria development, Galleria North, they have some plans for some activity to occur on their property as well. If for some reason their project gets moving quickly before we start the roadway, they would actually be responsible for construction of the roadway, and we would reimburse them. It's really a matter of who's ready to start first, but not knowing their complete schedule, we want to be ready to have a city contractor move in and start that workway as soon as possible. So we're hoping that either way that would occur in the months of March or April. The Galleria developer is going to be doing a little private work as well. They will be installing a private drive just to the east of the Belfonte car wash. This is an access roadway that'll provide access off of 58 highway to get back to commercial land that would be behind Belfonte's and Firestone, future commercial development. It also provides access to two pad sites they'll have to the east of Belfonte, between Belfonte and Foxwood Village, or Foxwood Springs. So they'll want to be able to, this is a roadway that was planned initially before any development occurred up there, so they are finally going to be installing that. And again, that would be a major point of access for residents of Raymore to visit future commercial that would occur in the back. More likely to turn there than it would go further to the west and turn at Westgate Drive. So look forward to that construction activity occurring. It actually gives a little bit more land to Belfonte's car wash. They want to add a second drive up lane to be able to speed up the traffic flow that goes through their facility. So a good project we've been working on for a little while. There is no cases to review for Planning Commission, so they have canceled their January 21st meeting. And then last, this evening, I do want to make an introduction. Katie Jardu, if you'd stand up. Katie is our new city planner that we have hired, replaces David Gress, as you know, as a city planner. Katie comes to us for the city of Overland Park. She was most recently a planner there. A native of the Kansas City area, Katie has her undergraduate degree from Kansas State. And she has a graduate degree from the University of Nebraska. So very excited to have Katie as part of our team. I wanted to introduce her this evening. That concludes staff report.
Welcome, Katie. Thank you. Any questions of staff? Mr. Holman.
More a comment. Another great report, Mr. Carteret. Thank you. The news on the final project for us to complete on our GeoBond project, which would be the Westgate Drive, or what we were referring to before as the relocated Kentucky Road, is especially inspiring, especially with the timeline you've given us. There was, and the chief would have more details, but there was looked like a serious injury accident there at the intersection of Kentucky and Dean, which was the biggest reason that we put that project on the ballot, was to improve safety there, and that's happened within the last 5 days. I know we had a lot of emergency vehicle equipment. I think someone was trying to exit the commercial property over there on the old Dean Farm site, and there was probably a T-bone collision. Hopefully it wasn't too serious, but I think we did have some injuries out of that. So that's great news. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good report, Jim. Question about the being down this year on the new home constructions. Is that just us, or is that a trend all over? And what's your crystal ball going into next year? And one of the things I've heard you say is we don't have a surplus of lots right now. So is there anything in the future that we're going to be seeing as far as opening up some lots in Raymore?
First, the downturn in the single-family construction in Raymore was matched across the metro area. All the communities, large and small, saw a downturn in single-family home construction in 2019. We're anticipating, for budget purposes, we've reduced the number of single-family homes. We are, due to the downturn in the number of lots we have available, we're under 400 lots available now. We were 1,600 lots not that long ago. That's had some impact. We have a number of new single-family development phases, either currently underway or soon to get started. So we have one going down to the Good Ranch, Prairie View, that will open up some lots. The Evanbrook lots are now open. Creekmore continues to add phases of different lot sizes and values. So it'll be steady. We don't expect numbers over the 200s like we've had for the last few years, but we do expect a steady number. And of course, with the Lofts Apartments, that alone is 400 units. Somewhat aside from everything else, but does bring in a lot of activity for the city. So we do anticipate a strong 2020.
Yeah, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To go along with your discussion there, Mr. Carteret, did we budget for 125 housing starts? What, if you recall?
Sir, I believe it was 85?
The year before.
It was 85, sir.
Oh, it was 85.
And
all
the
right.
number that Mr. Carteret gave you tonight, I would remind you, was actually over this past year's, the fiscal year 2019 budget amount.
Well, I wanted to know the budget amount that we talked about in the fall of 2018 for 2019. Do you remember?
125, sir.
All right, I was right. Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. I would ask Chief Zimmerman to make a report for the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. As the council will probably remember, the past couple of years, the first report in January to you all would be a comparison of the previous year's reports and offenses. And so the information I'm giving you all tonight is a comparison of 2019 to 2018. The good news is that offenses overall, and this is every offense that we report on, which are many, were down from 689 in 2018 to 468 in 2019, which is a reduction of 32% in overall offenses and crimes that we responded on, which is very, very good news. Our clearance rate stayed about the same, from 353 in 2018 to 239. So the percentage, since the number of crimes was lower, the percentage stayed about the same at 51% clearance rate. But also good news for us is that arrests from 2018 of 781 to 2019 went up 7% to 838. So the number of arrests that we made increased by about 7.3%. The thing that we're really pleased about is that the number of stealings, which is something that we respond to very frequently throughout the community, vehicles broken into, shoplifting at Walmart, all of those things that fall into the category of stealing, went down significantly from 423 in 2018 to 249 in 2019. So that's a pretty significant decrease. And also motor vehicle thefts were about cut in half from 25 to 14. So they went down significantly. We did have a couple of crimes that went up, aggravated assault, but of course for those of you who have law enforcement background, you know that an aggravated assault, if I pointed a gun at all of you right now, I would all of you all would be a victim. So you know, those are counted, those numbers are counted a little bit differently, obviously, that we do other crimes. So we did have 10 aggravated assaults, but that was 2 incidents that accounted for all of those victims in those aggravated assaults. I think one of the things that I did want to say really quickly before I finish, and then I'm happy to answer any questions, is that we had a number of crimes in Raymore during 2019 that were unusual for us. And obviously the shooting in the Walmart parking lot, you know, really people were very much on edge, you know, with that shooting, and those individuals were known to each other. And were arrested and charged, obviously. But a lot of the crimes that I had the detectives put together for me to share with you all showed that we work really well with outside agencies. And in those instances, like the robbery, you know, that took place, you know, up here at the phone store back in the summer, in which one of our victims was injured, we worked very closely with the FBI task force, the KC PD Violent Crimes Unit, and one of those individuals was charged with felony charges here in the county, but also one with federal charges as well. So, you know, working very closely with our partners, both here locally and also, you know, throughout the region, and our federal partners as well, has enabled us to clear a number of crimes that, you know, through having those resources available to us. But I'm really happy with the numbers going down, and really happy too on those all of those high-profile crimes that the community expresses concerns about, that those folks are in jail.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone else? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. Chief, that is an exceptional report. To summarize, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we know year after year the number one concern of all of our citizens is quality of life tied to public safety. And your department has received very high marks in how people feel about the police department and whether or not they feel safe here in town, to the tune of 100% on our last customer satisfaction survey. And so what you're telling us with the first number on all crimes reported, roughly a 32% reduction in crime year over year, and a clearance rate in excess of 50%. The national average for most departments, last I checked, was somewhere between 25 and 30. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, about 25%.
Exceeding that, that's clearing over half the crimes that occurred, probably most of those by arrest or arrest in other jurisdiction on a similar offense.
Yes, sir.
That's exceptional, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, to piggyback off of what Mr. Holman was speaking to, with that reduction in crime, could you speak to what policies or things that you did in the police department to help reduce the crime rate?
Sometimes it's good luck. Because if you take credit for it going down, you got to take the blame for it going back up. You know, it's good police work. It's the partnership with the people we have in our community. We have to count on. We can't be everywhere. We don't have a police officer on every corner in Raymore, but We rely on the people in our community to let us know when they see things that don't seem right. They are our eyes and ears so often, and you all have heard me say it here before you so many times, and I say it at community meetings. If you see something, say something. If something seems like it's out of place, it may be. We'd much rather respond and find out that that person was looking for their Aunt Martha's house than to find out that they were casing the neighborhood, to possibly break into cars or break into houses. So I have to say that it is so much our partnership with the community and the businesses as well, because the businesses are very good about staying on top of things that don't seem right in and around their businesses. So I think that it's that. I think it's that partnership that enables us to be as successful as we are.
I appreciate it, Chief. I figured that was the case because I know we didn't hire a lot more police officers, more
No.
patrols. So I figured it was the community being engaged with the police department. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and to add on to that, it absolutely is, Chief. I know I've had a lot of folks from the community tell me that your words of wisdom about lock your cars, close your garage doors, things like that are having an effect. A lot of people are paying more attention to that. They could do better, but they are starting to pay attention to that, and I think that does help quite a bit. Yep, thank you. Anyone else? Not? Mr. Fearborn, you got anything else?
Thank you, Chief. Just want to remind the council that next week is the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. There will be no council meeting next week. The following week, we will, of course, reconvene for a regular session. That concludes staff reports tonight, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda tonight. I would entertain a motion to dispose of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented to include item A, City Council minutes from the December 23rd, 2019 meeting of the City Council. Item B, appointments and affirmations of membership to incentive district boards. Item C, 2019 street preservation project acceptance and final payment. And item D, appointing members to the Liquor Code Enforcement Agency.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
The motion has been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3511 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3511 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, calling for and establishing the date of the general municipal election to be held on April the 7th, 2020.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman?
I move that we approve Bill 3511, calling for the April 7th, 2020 regular municipal election.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3511. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. And could I please have the second reading of Bill 3517 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3517 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the Fox Ridge Business Park final plat located in the northeast quarter of Section 17, Township 46 North, Range 32 West, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman?
I move that we approve Bill 3517, Fox Ridge Business Park final plat.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3517. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have, this is on the tax increment financing plans and redevelopment projects progress overview. It requires a public hearing. I will open a public hearing at this time, and I would ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to make the staff report on this agenda item.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes,
may.
Mr. Carteret.
Mr. Gress has a presentation he's going to be showing the public. I want to broadcast it to the council members as well.
Okay. And just information for the council, as you see in your agenda, the presentation includes several TIFs districts. that David will be reporting on. He will report on one, and then we'll open that up for discussion. Any one from the public who would like to speak to that particular TIF can do so at that time, and we'll move on in that order with the public hearing open during the entire presentation. So, Mr. Gress.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I'm pleased to present on the various TIF districts that exist within the city of Raymore and report on the progress of those plans since they've been adopted here by the City Council of Raymore. First and foremost, we'll jump straight into the intersection at 58 Highway and Mott Drive, probably better known to you all as the location of Culver's, just south of Foxwood Springs. At the time that the current ownership of this property is maintained by Foxwood Plaza LLC, which is the same ownership that it was under when this plan was presented to the City Council. The current status of this project is inactive in the sense that it's currently awaiting future development for the undeveloped portions of this area, with the exception of Culver's within this district. The number of relocated residences and businesses during this reporting period is 0, and the number of parcels acquired through the use of eminent domain is 0. For the purposes of not repeating that, the numbers for all 3 of those for each of these TIF districts is also 0, so we'll take that out of the equation for the other districts moving forward. At the time that this district was proposed to the city, it was projected that it would create roughly 142 new jobs within the city. Alone with Culver's, fully under operation, has created 50 of those jobs. We're hopeful that as soon as development continues to happen on this property, it will fulfill the rest of those jobs, if not surpass those as development occurs. Looking at some of the economic activity on this property, the payments in lieu of taxes are your pilots, which is your property tax portion of the equation, and then the economic activity taxes, which is your economic activity that takes place on the property. Pilots to date within this reporting period, just shy of $90,000 in total, and EATs totaling just under $500,000 at $452,615.88. Looking at the increased tax generation as far as the assessed valuation of the property, when this was originally proposed to the City Council, this property overall had an assessed valuation of $3,149. Since its inception, the added valuation to this property has been roughly $330,000 or $330,170. So a substantial increase in the property taxes as well as the economic activity on this site. That will conclude the staff report for this portion of the presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from council? Yes, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you. When you say inactive, does that mean the pilots are still being paid? It's just...
Correct.
Correct.
Inactive in the sense that the one project that has been approved is operational, and the other components of the TIF district are awaiting future development proposals within that district.
Thank you.
You're up, Mr. Holman.
Yes, sir. A question for you or Mr. Fearborn, perhaps, just to verify what I think I know, and so the audience knows. This is a non-legislative agenda item we're hearing. In other words, we're not voting on this. This is just a report update, an informational update for us, but there is an opportunity for the public to speak because of the public hearing on each of the different TIF districts that Mr. Gress is going to speak on. Is that correct, sir?
And at the end, I would ask for a motion to accept the report.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Gress, since this is a public hearing, anyone from the public that would like to address this particular item at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. See no one coming forward, go ahead and move on to the next report, Mr. Gress.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving back to the east, along 58 Highway at the intersection of 58 and Dean Avenue is the Raymore Galleria TIF plan, which is by far the largest and probably the most complex of TIF plans given the kind of breakout of the different project areas within it. The current ownership is controlled by 2 primary owners, the PDD Development and also Raymore Galleria LLC, with some smaller entities in there controlling some of the other components of the land. To date, the status of the project is inactive, again, only in the sense that 2 of the projects are fully operational. The other undeveloped portions of this plan are awaiting future development at some time in the future. At the time, again, when this plan was proposed to the City Council, it was estimated that within this area it would create 153 new jobs. With Lowe's, Walmart, Sam's Club, and some of the other larger developments that we see in there, we've actually surpassed that considerably at a total of 458 jobs to date. And we'll only hopefully continue to add to that as further development happens to the north of 58 Highway and hopefully in the area south of Sam's Club and the other project areas that exist. Some of the economic activity that's taken place within the reporting period, just over $3.5 million in pilot payments to the city generated as part of this project, and a little shy of $12 million in EATs that have been generated by the economic activity taking place within this district. The overall added valuation, again, when this project was originally proposed to the City Council, the undeveloped land around here, given it was mostly ag land, farmland, undeveloped, had a value of about $10,116. And since the inception of this district, given the development that's happened, it has added roughly $7.6 million of assessed valuation to the overall project area within this TIF district. Again, that would conclude this portion of my presentation. Any questions on this district, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? Since it's a public hearing, I would offer again to anyone from the public wish to address this particular project or item, please step forward. Seeing none, go ahead, Mr. Gress.
Thank you, sir. Moving a little bit to the north would be the most recent, probably to the City Council, would be the 58 Highway and Dean Avenue TIF, commonly known as the location of Mod Pizza, the Raymore Marketplace, Qdoba, Mexican Eats, and another handful of businesses here within the city. Currently controlled by Raymore Partners LLC, also known as Cadence Commercial Real Estate. They are the owner, the operator, and the broker for this property to date. Again, this is the status of this TIF district is fully operational. All the projects and plan areas within this TIF plan have been completed and are fully operational to date. Looking at the total number of jobs that were estimated to be created at the time of its inception, 50 of those jobs that were initially anticipated have been created with the creation of the businesses that exist within this district. Some of the economic activity, the pilot payments were not part of this TIF plan, therefore that number is 0, as you'll see in the presentation, and the total number of economic activity taxes resulting in $251,040.79 to date. Looking at the added valuation, the impact that this has had on the area, when this TIF was originally proposed to the city, the area surrounding this development had a valuation of about $22,810. And to date, given the development that has occurred, that valuation has added, the projects have added and assessed $849,800 in assessed valuation to the property. That would conclude my presentation on this portion. Any questions? Happy to answer.
Any questions? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Gress. Great report. This development is currently full. They have no other openings for tenants because there's no open space. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I would consider that a very good success, and it happened in a relatively short time. I've also heard rumors, I don't know if they're true, but that Cadence has had to turn down potential businesses to come in there because they have no more open spots. Is that correct?
I do believe that would be the case. I know those spots filled up very quickly, as you mentioned, a very prominent spot, very desirable for a lot of retailers and tenants in the area.
Good news. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else have a question? If not, again, I would offer any kind of public comment. Please step forward. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next portion.
Thank you, sir. Last but certainly not least would be the Good Ranch redevelopment area TIF plan. You'll probably recall this just almost about a year ago in January of 2019. Due to the timing and the time span that occurred since this TIF plan was initiated by the city, that 10-year span did lapse within the last year, and in January 2019, the City Council actually voted to dissolve this TIF district and essentially waiting until further development before any other activity would occur with regards to that. So at this time, as you'll see, there's been no changes in the economic activity, any of the numbers that were originally proposed when this district was approved by the city until now. If there's any questions on this, I'm more than happy to answer those, but that would conclude my presentation for this item.
Well, I assume that the estimated increase in tax generation, originally it was 11,310. It's still about that rather than 0?
Yes.
Okay, because it says assessed valuation added 0 to that, so I assume it's still at the 11. It didn't go up at all?
I don't know if it hadn't gone up at all. That's just what it was in the beginning. If you're curious, I can double check on the area that was within that boundary.
I know it's not much more. I had thought from our last report, last meeting that we had on this particular TIF project, that had gone up a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate that it would up too considerably.
I think it was
but
like, Jim, was it like 13,000 something or 14? I was thinking from the meeting, but it's been a while since we had that meeting.
I think that the second valuation on there, as far as assessed valuation added, is actually the amount that is
Additional
added
amount.
because of the TIF.
Gotcha.
And since there is no TIF, and the reason this one is being reported out, even though it's a non-TIF, is because just like the budget, where activity that occurred in a period in the past shows for like 2 years before an account would drop off, same thing here. That's what you're looking at.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions? Again, anyone from the public wish to comment? Seeing no one come forward, go ahead, David.
Excellent. That would conclude my staff report. If there are no questions from the council, appreciate your time.
Did you have a question, Ms. Townsend?
Thank you. When I look at the state auditor's database for TIF reports, what's the cycle for these updating to for the TIF database? I see the latest one's out there, 2017, and one is 2018. Is it usually a year out to give you time to resolve, or?
Gilmore and Bell actually turns those in annually, sir. So if they're not showing on the TIF database, that's on the state, because I know that they were sent in November.
I thought they were. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept this report.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman.
I move that we accept the tax increment financing plans and redevelopment progress overview as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion been made and second to accept the report. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you, David.
Thank you, sir.
Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3520 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3520 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving a conditional use permit for outdoor recreation activities on property located at 500 South Lincoln Avenue.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a staff report for this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. What I'd like to do is start the presentation, have the applicants come forward. They have a PowerPoint that I would like to project to your computers again so you can see what the public is seeing. And then after completion of their presentation, I will go over the staff report.
Okay. It has been my custom to open the public hearing when one is required prior to the staff report. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. I apologize for that short delay, but the public hearing is now open, and we'll go ahead and wait for you to open the presentation there.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me here tonight. My name's James Ryan, resident of Raymore. I'm here on behalf of the Impact Fieldhouse startup venture, and I'm representing my partners Mike Chick, Brian Smith, and our families. The three of us are residents of Raymore, and our mission is to deliver a multi-purpose indoor-outdoor sports complex to Raymore. So I've got a presentation here that kind of illustrates our intent. So I'd like to walk you through that. So this is our mission statement. I'll let you see this. Our goals here are to create somewhat of a fellowship with this field house. It's a place for the community, and I can't stress that enough. This field house is for the entire community, surrounding communities. And we will lead and inspire our youth. What's really important to us at the core is that a field house like this will help promote the healthy lifestyle benefits that you see with sports and activity. And we have a keen sense of character when it comes to staffing our field house. So that is our that is our goal, is to make sure we have quality people leading our kids, setting a good example, et cetera. So from that mission, we have a list of strategic objectives. And I'll try to make this succinct for you, but we are looking to provide a training home for multiple sports. Now, there's a focus on a few sports, but we are open to any sports that we can facilitate with our site plan and configuration. Open to all demographics, all ages, all skill levels. So this is not a place for competitive level training. This is a place for anyone to start at entry level experience, et cetera. We'd like to be positioned, and I'll show you, we've got a nice location that we're currently moving on, which has great accessibility to our neighbors. Indoor is important because of our erratic weather patterns anymore. There's a lot of downtime. I've got 5 kids, by the way, and so, we're paying for a season, but we play for 60% of it. So an indoor solution is kind of, solves that problem. Competitive pricing, we understand the price point of our demographic, and we fully intend to stay in our lane with fees, rental fees, membership fees, et cetera. So we're not planning to be priced high like you'd find up north. We want to service Cass County and high quality turf. So that's kind of the essence of what we're doing here is right now, the city does not have an indoor turf facility, so our plan is to solve that market need. And with turf, you can do a multitude of different sports and activities. So it's a market need. We believe it would add value to the community. So that's what we're doing, indoor turf playing fields. We talked about exceptional staffing. We believe this will have an economic impact on Raymore, a positive one. Number 9, I used to ride my bike into the night as a kid, and grew up in Cass County, right? And, now I'm a father of 5. I'm constantly struggling to understand what's happened, right? So what's happened is we don't feel safe, not like we used to when I was a kid. So we believe our field house is going to be, a place that is safe for kids. And hopefully, yet another avenue for them to get out of the house and, and experience life with one another. And then number 10, we'd like to circumvent direct competition. And it's like I said, we're doing a turf facility, Belton and Raymore. There are plenty of hard surface playing facilities. So that's kind of the intention here is to fill that need. So I talked about multi-purposing, and this is just an array of different programs or sports that we could offer. When I say offer, facilitate a space to practice. We've highlighted some that have gained in popularity. We've got a segment of the site dedicated to baseball. Given that materializes, we hear a lot that kids and parents are looking for a place to train, batting cages and pitching lanes. Indoor soccer, it's not highlighted, but recently I've been hearing a lot about lacrosse. There's a strong local tennis prospect that we're considering a joint venture on at the moment. We have many speed and agility trainers looking to do sports neutral youth training for injury prevention. So on turf, you can do all that stuff. Our focus is training, by the way. It's not league play. We may get into an adult league for the evenings, and we've heard a lot of interest from the community adult league. Just another avenue to diffuse that occupational stress. I play Sunday evenings on an adult league, so I know that's a popular thing. So our location is right off of J Highway and 58. There's an light industrial site that we're in contract to acquire. And I'm just illustrating our market reach here with the 15-minute drive radius. Like I said, we capture most of the county here. And within that radius, there really isn't a facility such as this one. So this is the property off of J. And our acquisition, it includes everything within the red boundary. So the building and the site. I'm just going to breeze through what we're doing with the buildings, because I understand the focus of this meeting is our conditional use permit for the outdoor land. But just to give you an idea of the concept here, is indoors we would have these high quality, small sided turf fields, and we would have 3 in the main 2 buildings. Some restrooms, some training pens, and let's see here, back here, and a kids corral. This is the separate building, and so this one right now, it's the intent here is to do baseball. However, we'll design this without any permanent structures, maybe sliding nets, so that it can also be versatile or multi-purposed. So this is just a popular concept. It's a training pen, fully enclosed box to bang balls off the wall and have containment. And so there's a multitude of ways you could utilize these structures for training. So this is a kids corral. It'll just be an area with limited supervision, but a place for the parents to put the younger ones and play safely while they keep an eye on their kids, and get to share some of that attention with the bigger kids on the field. We've got a concession stand that we're planning at kind of the focal point of the facility. These are some renderings that we did earlier on, just to give you an example of the look and the feel of a field house like this. It doesn't quite match the 2D that I've presented. This is kind of an alpha, if you will, concept 1. So as far as the spread here, so we've got in the, let's see, that's the northwest quadrant. We've got a spot for a baseball infield training site, which we may pursue. We're trying to define that as we work through the remainder of our business plan. The 2 main buildings, again, soccer is a focus there, but multi-purpose, absolutely. And likewise with that outdoor building, we've got a restroom planned. This is based on feedback from planning and zoning. We're going to attach that to that outbuilding, and so that would service the outdoor component as well as have access to within that building, which we learned from your building official. So the outdoor is again the focus of this meeting, and the idea there is to maximize our playing surface, and we'll probably do some excavating of the land and maybe sod it or plant seed, or in the future potentially turf. So this just demonstrates access to the baseball infield site and a netting, if that's how we end up utilizing that area. But planning and zoning had a stipulation for a hard surface access, so just an idea of what that would look like. This is a concept for parking. So we have preliminary occupancy load factors decided amongst ourselves, and the city building official, our architects and engineers are working on that final number. But until they do, I'm in the blind on how many spaces we need necessarily. But parking lot expansion A is our intention, at least to start there, and then depending on the occupancy load, we would probably look to expand to the north, or potentially the yellow zone expansion C, which would encroach somewhat on the field. But that's the idea. So we want to make sure that we limit off-road parking in the adjacent neighborhood, and the strategy there to mitigate that is to ensure we have the capacity within these footprints. So this gives you an idea of the space. We've, based on feedback from the city, we have some setbacks from the property line. So this demonstrates that. and we were required to do a fence, so that's the blue dotted line, and you're seeing the boundary of a large format soccer field 10 feet off of that. So we would end up with a playing surface outdoors of 200 to 285. And so then this could be split up into 4, potentially 6 training pods. So you could facilitate 4 to 6 teams out here to practice. And lighting, I've superimposed, based on our lighting plan, we're looking at a 4-pole solution for lighting. Here's just an isometric view of that same thing. That fencing is we've been requested to do an 8 to 12-foot fence here with an opaque mesh along the east and south property lines, but not on the west. With that said, that's the bulk of the project. Now, I do have a part 2 to touch on the lighting, because it is one of the stipulations from the Planning and Zoning Committee that we are not permitted to run lighting, and so that's something that we were looking forward to and was a strategic objective of our business plan. Right now, our kids are limited with the current facilities because of a lack of lighting. And when we talk about lighting, I just want to make a note that this is really no more than 12 weeks out of the year that we're talking about. And we've decided amongst ourselves, if we're allowed to showcase lighting, we would do so in a very unintrusive fashion. And we would plan to set that off on a timer around 9 o'clock, which is no different than a summer day. You've got daylight out till about 9 o'clock. So we've made some effort to communicate that with the residents in the neighborhood. We've partnered with Todd Miller from Luminous Vitality. He's a local lighting company, and he's been working on a lighting plan. Do you mind if he speaks on behalf of the lighting plan? Okay, well, I'd appreciate that.
Grateful to be here. Yeah, Todd Miller, and I'm a resident of Lenexa, but I work for a business here in Raymore. Do you still want the address? 7922 Nolan Road, Lenexa, Kansas. Okay, so with respect to the lighting, I just really wanted to establish that the lighting solution is a custom lighting solution that takes into account the interests of the residents surrounding the area, as well as the interests of the players and spectators. So in view of that, real quickly, we can kind of hop through project considerations and solution design. The things that I think both the community and the city might have concerns with are things that are unintentional or unintended consequences of lighting, such as spill, glare, and sky glow. So we've put together a bit of a plan to address those things and why the interest of the spectator, the player, and the residents are all parallel. So common goals and advantages of precise lighting control is that the lighting is contained on the field and not spilled over into adjacent areas, which is probably, if I were a resident anywhere near the field, that would be something that I would be concerned about. So it's from an operational standpoint, from a player standpoint, from a spectator standpoint, and from a resident standpoint, containing light in a precise fashion on the playing area and not having any leakage, waste, inefficiency outside of the playing area is kind of a uniform objective. So we'll talk a little bit about, and I'll just quickly move into some images that will help us to get a handle on all these things. So controlled output using optics, reflectors, and visors on the lighting solution. design of the solution, minimizing fixture count, and then obviously the ongoing maintenance and operation would bring into play, as James talked about, the number of weeks of the year, and the hours of operation during the daytime period and spill over into the nighttime period. So how do we conform and adhere to those parameters? So this will address some of those things. This is a current image of what you see from a position standing on Neptune and Sunrise, looking at the proposed location for the field house right now. That is the lighting coming from the storage facility that is located on the far side of the property that would be used for the field house and for the soccer fields. So you can see right now there is definitely glare and sky glow coming from the existing configuration of that particular tenant of that piece of land. So anyway, again, this kind of speaks to the fact that a ball field, if you look at the upper picture, you'll notice that the field is bathed in light and the perimeter at the berm is almost in complete darkness. So the objective of any field lighting solution is once again to focus the light onto the field to provide high visibility of the ball or balls, depending on the sport, that are being used, so spectators and players are able to track and focus on what they're doing on the field. The objective, again, is to have a hard line of definition at the edge of the field. That, again, is a benefit to the players, it's a benefit to the spectators, and a benefit to the residents of the community. This is unfortunately a bit small on this medium. So the soccer field is located bottom center of the image, and it has the foot candle outputs, which for a recreational playing field, requirements are about 30 to 40 foot candles of output at the playing surface. You'll see conformance to those numbers throughout the playing field. The left-hand side of the image at the bottom is the residential community adjacent where Neptune and Sunrise come together. So at that point, you'll notice that on all horizontal and vertical surfaces for all of those residents, there is a 0 foot candle impact from the proposed stadium lighting. These lighting diagrams are put together by a team of designers that have put in fields for Baylor University, a number of, I could pull a list of Kansas and Missouri locations that they've done as well. And they are highly skilled in the world of field lighting. So once again, 0 foot candle impact, horizontal and vertical, so that means fence and yard. In those residents adjacent to the property. So this is just a list of the number of luminaires, number of poles, some detail stuff. You can take a look at that. If you'd like further explanation, I can dig into it, but it's really just a lighting count. Also, the area, let me go back for a second. The area on the field side of Sunrise, I walked it with a light meter on Friday or Saturday night. I'm not sure which it was, but capturing the current state, foot candles on the field side of Sunrise varied between 1.25 and about 3.5. Foot candles on the residential side, because of the 2 street lights, because of garage lights and other ambient lights coming out of the households, ranged more between 3.5 and 6.5 on the residential side of the street. Once again, we're talking about adding 0 to both locations. This is just a very non-scale diagram of the components of a proposed solution, including the light fixture, the pole, the luminaires, the control boxes, and the other miscellaneous hardware that would be required. This is, again, an image of the individual luminaire that goes onto the fixture attached to the poles, providing some specifications. You'll notice the visor at the top of the light is there for the purpose of eliminating sky glow. That in conjunction with lighting technology that is able to provide pinpoint focus of the light-emitting diodes in the direction of desired coverage is what leads us to, and I'm going to run back to another slide real quick just to show you. The bottom image in this slide is the progression of non-louvered, non-visored lighting to louvered and visored lighting. So the pole on the left is completely unprotected and is still using LED technology, but it's using LED technology in the rawest form. The middle image would be using some very fundamental louvering and visoring, and as you move to the right, it's more advanced technology. And the partner that we're working with to provide this solution is one that is an expert in providing solutions of the nature that you would see and experience in terms of spillover output on the right-hand side of that image. And once again, as it pertains to stipulations and hours of operation, that is probably one of the most important things to this. You know, I would have a concern is what is going to enforce you in terms of, you know, having these lights off at a proper time. You know, we're all human mistakes, but there are controls in place that are very, very well designed for timeout on lighting, and so these can be set. They can be automatically adjusted for daylight savings time, so ideally the system should operate without any supervision and provide the adherence and conformance to the parameters expected. But at the same time, if you'll notice down at the bottom of the image, there is a remote control because of unforeseen things, rainouts, cancellations, other events in the community that would take priority over this. There is the ability to control the lights from remote locations. So by phone, somebody could be contacted and they could take action. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the control and operation. And then I'd just like to, you know, to redirect back to a couple of things. You know, once again, the common interests in terms of efficiency and maintaining light on the playing surface should be parallel between all concerned parties. Control, conformance, and adherence, again, being another thing that I think is important to both sides. And I would like to point out, as James did as well, the direct and indirect economic impact, the impact on the quality of life for the community of Raymore, and economic development as well. I don't know the number of jobs directly that they plan on creating with this in particular, but if you look at the indirect, it is a membership facility. They had a diagram with a 15-mile radius that spilled over into Grandview, Lee Summit, Harrisonville, and so on. Just using some really conservative numbers, if 2% of the membership eventually relocated into this community, if quality of life attracted seniors into this community, and the net result was 30 additional households, the economic labor impact to the community would be roughly $500,000, if I'm not mistaken. So there is potential not only for the direct but also for indirect growth in the community and economic development as well. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you be able to provide us with some examples of places that are close enough for us to visit to see this type of lighting in operation?
Absolutely.
Also, it's very important that whether you did it Saturday or Friday night based on the snowfall.
It would have been Friday, but I've got timestamps on my images.
Because it would have been totally not a very good experiment on a Saturday.
Absolutely correct.
Thank you.
You're right.
Mr. Holman, sorry.
I have a question for staff. This case came to us from Planning and Zoning, and it came with 8 specific conditions. One was no lights. what the applicant and their contractor expert that's come before us is asking for what I would deem a substantial change in this case. So my question, Mr. Zer, does this need to, if they are now asking for this, does this need to be kicked back to planning and zoning before we hear it?
There was substantial discussion during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting regarding the proposed lighting and the issues surrounding that. You as a board, or as a council, could make the determination that, in fact, you could stay with the original Planning and Zoning Commission evaluation, which would be to adopt it subject to those conditions. You could impose additional conditions, or you could accept the lighting subject to any conditions that you all might have come to. It is within your discretion to give it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission if you're inclined to do so, if you feel that it is such a substantial alteration. But there was discussion about it at the Planning and Zoning Commission level. They did have the opportunity to consider the impact of potential lighting at that time.
And they held with the no lighting as presented to us, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Behrens? Anybody else? Did you have something else, John?
I would simply note they did not have the detailed information with regard to the number of lights that they were talking about doing, but they did present the notion of having lights on to a certain time frame of the day.
Correct. Mr. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sir, when you mentioned the louvers on the lights and that the diagram you showed us that you wouldn't be able to see the actual lighting, how far back does you have to go to not see that lighting? I'm particularly concerned about traffic on J Highway and motorists on Sunrise.
Sunrise.
Will they be able to, so will people on Sunrise be able to see those lights?
They will visit, it might be that I need to grab that back to kind of illustrate. I apologize. They will be able to see the lights. The impact at their retina is going to be 0-foot candles.
Okay.
There we go. So again, this is the view that you're getting currently from Jay and Sunrise right now. So what I would say to you is the visibility from these lights is not going to have the same magnitude as that. Again, this is kind of an image that shows visibility. If you get out to the edge of the field there, you're going to find that there is a 0-foot candle, as I referred to in terms of the vertical and horizontal surfaces. There's going to be 0-foot candles, but yes, you are going to be able to see light.
And the same with 58 Highway. Obviously, you'll see the light, not 58, I'm sorry, J Highway. You'll obviously see the lights, but zero
lumen or foot candle output on the road. So in other words, it's not enough light to dilate or constrict somebody's pupil. At the same time, it is enough that they're going to perceive that there's a light bulb up in the sky.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm somewhat confused because looking at the packet that I had, what the planning and zoning approved, I think Mr. Holman mentioned it, didn't mention lighting, and now we're getting a lighting presentation. So I have a couple of questions. Has staff seen anything on this lighting? Because you're going to give a report at some point, aren't you? And my assumption is staff is, according to this, is not recommending lighting, and I'm sure, I assume that hasn't changed. So I'm going to get in the weeds a little bit and ask a couple of questions. I assume this technology is very expensive. This sounds like pretty cutting edge. This focusing light and LED is pretty expensive. And my point to that is, I'm sure there's cheaper alternatives to light up a field. And do we have anything in code that talks about what's allowed and what's not allowed as far as lighting? And maybe that's something you're going to talk about, but I'm kind of jumping ahead. But I'm a little confused that we got one thing and we're getting a presentation on something totally different. So just wanted to clarify.
Okay. Mr. Townsend?
And Mr. Barber hit the point on the questions I was going to ask as well, because I was preparing for this and looked over the minutes from the P&Z. There was commentary and conversation about adding in a time limit for lighting. But yet, when I look at the staff recommendation, number 4 says no lighting of outdoor recreation fields allowed. And then I further look into Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. Their item number 4 also says no lighting of outdoor recreation fields is allowed. So that's where I'm also confused of hearing tonight's presentation. Although I did see in the comments from the P&Z minutes regarding a time limit for lighting. Usually we don't have a opposing recommendation from P&Z and from staff. Usually they agree. But yet here we are, both agree, but now we're hearing another alternative to that recommendation. So that's where it's really putting me in a disadvantage of making a recommendation.
Mr. Zur, I know that we discussed this to a certain extent, and even at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, there was a discussion about whether or not members of the council could amend the final decision to include lighting, which I think is why we're receiving the lighting presentation tonight. Could you expand upon how we left that meeting a little bit?
I think I can.
Okay.
From the position of the Planning and Zoning Commission, again, the Planning and Zoning Commission is a recommending body with regard to any application that comes before it. They are making a recommendation to you. You as the council may still alter or change that recommendation if you're inclined to do so based upon the information that's provided to you during the course of this public hearing.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Holm.
Mr. Barber brings up a good point. Mr. Carteret, has staff seen this presentation on the lighting yet? Have the applicants spoken to you about this in this type of detail?
We have not seen an official submittal. The only thing that we have seen is what was presented as part of the PowerPoint this evening. So it doesn't have the detail for me to do an analysis of it or a review of it.
Ms. Abdelgawad.
Another quick question about the meeting. I don't see it in the notes, but in some conversations I've had with people on this topic, I've heard people say that in the planning and zoning meeting, some of the commissioners recommended that these business people with their plan do a lighting plan, that they didn't have it that night, but that P&Z actually recommended that they get a lighting plan or work on a lighting plan as part of kind of how the conversation ended that night. Is that factual, or is that kind of, maybe I misunderstood?
I will, if it's okay, I'll get to the details of that when I go through the staff recommendation and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation. We'll get into those details.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir. Does the applicant have anything additional before we move on to staff report?
Thank you. Again, I just wanted to add that from the applicant's perspective, the process for revisiting the lighting topic was unclear to us at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and if I understood correctly, our directive was to address it with you here and now for the first time. So we went, forged this relationship and started to do our own due diligence on a lighting plan. And just to reiterate, again, our intention is, to invest in whatever lighting technology is required to limit any type of noise pollution into that residence. So that is our intention from an owner-operator standpoint.
Okay. Well, we haven't heard the staff yet, but go ahead.
Based on the applicant's comments, I believe at this time that this case needs to be remanded back to Planning and Zoning with the information that they have new information that they've come up with that needs to be heard by Planning and Zoning in its entirety for a new recommendation on this one way or another. I'm prepared to make that motion at this time, sir.
Well, hold on. Let's see what Mr. Townsend has to say. You good? All right. You want to wait and do the motion now, or you want to wait?
We have people that want to speak. I'm willing to wait.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Abdel.
Just real quick, I just found in the notes, Mayor Turnbow indicated there could be a lighting plan presented to the City Council prior to the council consideration of the request. So that kind of explains why maybe they're confused about how the process should go, and thought it relevant to bring that before us rather than P&Z tonight.
Okay. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. for the applicant, if we do pass this tonight, and obviously not the lighting portion, but if we table that section or don't pass the additional request for lighting and just pass the other part of it, how does that affect you? And if we put that portion for us to discuss, maybe send it back to P&Z, or we discuss that later?
So we're currently in the due diligence phase of closing on this property, and that time expires soon. And we're all making a big investment for our community here and putting our families at risk to do so. So we want to make a highly informed decision about this investment. And like I said earlier, we have strategic objectives that make a business case and fulfill our, comprehensive user experience, of which lighting is at the top of the list. And so because of the timing constraint with due diligence and moving forward on the acquisition, not knowing if we would be approved is risk. It's project risk. Having an approval on the conditional use permit to allow for the outdoor activities now would help tremendously. So because of my ignorance on the process, it's unclear to me whether or not, if you were to approve outdoor sports with the stipulation of no lighting, if there's a process that I can then walk through with the team to then readdress lighting later, because that would help us, right? Just knowing that we can, because if come expiration of due diligence, we still don't know if we can use that land for outdoor use, we might have to cancel the project. So that's the... Does that answer your question?
I think so. I mean, quickly, I'm excited to have you guys here. I think there's a lot of good here that could benefit our community. It's troublesome to get a report and make a decision without having seen this ahead of time. So typically, we get a packet and we have all the information with at least a few days to look through it, ask questions to the city. And so it's a tough thing for me personally to see this tonight, and not that I don't want to support it, but I would need just a little bit of time before I personally could support that. So again, thank you for the presentation, and we'll see if we can do something to help you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Mr. Barber.
Well, I just wanted to add, I appreciate what you're doing and wanting to make an educated decision. We want to do, I want to do the same thing here, and maybe a compromise wouldn't have to send it all the way back to P&Z, but I'm not willing to vote on any kind of lighting situation without staff doing a staff report and an investigation on it and coming back to us with information. I understand that's going to take some time, but that may be a quicker way of doing it. Send it back to staff and get a report on that, then send it all the way back to P&Z. And certainly we haven't heard anything from, in this public hearing, we haven't heard anything from the residents of Morning View either to see what they think of it. It's going to impact them more than anybody. So that just may be a compromise.
Well, and I would agree. I think the comprehensive report that was given to us tonight on lighting is new to all of us. Planning and zoning didn't even have an opportunity to look at that. And we were basing our decision on the motion from, or the report from staff of the 8 conditions that had to be in place in order for this to move forward. And I think that's where we were on that. Frankly, I would like to go ahead and have Jim report to us, and then if there, at that time there's still an appetite to push it back to planning and zoning after staff has had an opportunity to review the full lighting report, then potentially that, I think that's appropriate. But I would at least like the staff to be armed with the report from staff tonight, if you could. Mr. Holman.
I concur, sir. I'm just not sure exactly what our process going forward should be. Perhaps Mr. Zer's got some answers for us. I know most of us seem to be generally comfortable with what's as presented to us in the packet, but the lighting issue seems to be the one that staff has not been able to explore yet, and we want that to be done.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Zur, you have a comment?
Sure. So again, one of the options that has already been identified, and Councilmember Barber did a good job on doing so, would be to provide instructions to staff. You do have a public hearing that is currently open. You need to complete that public hearing, and you have a number of individuals here within the crowd who are from the public who have taken time out of their days to be up here and to present to you. You've received new information this evening regarding lighting that I think they should be able to provide input on before you decide to close your public hearing or perhaps table your public hearing to a later date. That would give staff instruction time to do what you instruct them to do based upon the lighting evaluation.
Okay. Does that sound good? Okay, so we'll move on to the staff report.
Thank you, sir. Let's take a step back from the lighting and kind of give the overview of the actual request. Be brief with that. Specific request this evening, again, is for a conditional use permit. It is for the outdoor recreational activity component of the overall project that was explained to you this evening. Do want to note the property was defined. It is the former Russell Karting Specialties location. They had a business there for many, many years, closed down in 2017. Dolores Russell, the property owner, as was indicated, did authorize the filing of this application to the applicants this evening. The property is zoned M1 light industrial. Conditional use permit does require a public hearing that was advertised for this evening. I do want to enter into the record the notices that were sent to all the adjoining property owners of the public hearing, the notice of publication published in the Journal, our Unified Development Code, the application that was submitted, our growth management plan, staff report submitted to you this evening, and the conceptual site plan that was included in your packet. The property has been zoned industrial as part of the industrial park area that is really more to the north. The first building on the site was constructed in 1989. The indoor recreational activities is a permitted use within the M1 zoning district, so the discussion of the indoor activities really not a part of the request this evening. There are two areas, as the applicant described, for outdoor activities. That's what's being requested. There's the outdoor baseball field, training grounds at the northwest corner of the site, and then there's the proposed soccer football play field at the corner of Sunrise and J Highway. The parking lot access is the existing parking area that was for Russell Karting with access off of J Highway. The overall square footage of the three buildings, just under 20,000 square foot. Comparison purposes, our rack is about 16,300 square foot. So the three buildings combined a little bit larger than our recreational activity facility. The existing parking area, a little hard when I was looking at trying to lay out how many parking spaces could be shown there, but at least 35 spaces would fit within that area. Again, they showed in their plan areas where that parking could be expanded. Planning Commission submitted proposed findings of fact. I want to briefly discuss the meeting that they did hold back on January 17th. So I did include the minutes in your packet from that meeting. A lot of discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, as the minutes reflect. Initially, when the public hearing was opened, no public comments. Public hearing open and closed. As customarily is done during public hearings of this nature, city attorney specifically then asked the applicant if they were agreeable to the 8 conditions as recommended by staff. We like to have that on the record. That's when the applicant, one of the applicants, Mr. Smith, made the comment that they did have a slight concern about no lighting of the fields. First time that we heard that. That raised a little red flag, honestly, in my eyes, because that had not been discussed. When staff initially met with the applicant, outdoor lighting was not on the table. It was not even a proposal from the applicant. And I made it clear at that meeting that staff would be against any outdoor lighting. And that's why you saw that condition. Even though they weren't asking for it, I wanted that condition in there because I didn't want to see that happen at some later time. I think that discussion, that question, when they didn't agree with the staff conditions, then started all the discussion amongst the commission. There was a request then to reopen the public hearing because we had public present Mayor made that motion, open the public hearing again. Now that lighting has been introduced into the equation, how does the public feel? Two individuals did speak, the HOA president and the daughter of one of the residents that lived directly to the south of the property. Those two individuals spoke. One of the commissioners then, after the public hearing was again closed, did make a motion specifically to accept the staff recommendation of approval, subject to all the 8 conditions, but they modified condition 4 to indicate that lighting is acceptable until 9:00 p.m. There was discussion before the motion, was 9:00 a reasonable time? That question was made of the applicant. They said yes, 9:00 was a reasonable time. On that motion, there are only 3 commissioners in favor. 5 of the commissioners did not want to see outdoor lighting of the facility, so that motion failed. After that is when you saw the motion to recommend approval with all the 8 conditions as recommended by staff, condition 4 being the one that says no outdoor lighting. That motion was approved unanimously by all 8 commission members. The lighting plan process itself, again, staff recommendation is not going to change. Whether or not the lighting plan they submitted to you this evening, whether it meets code or doesn't meet code, it does not change our recommendation. There's a reason that a outdoor recreational facility is a conditional use. It's specifically there to make sure that that outside activity does not impact in any way adjacent property. It is our contention that lighting of that field, even directed, the lighting plan that I was explained this evening, I think, directs it down onto the field. There should not be outdoor lighting within 80 feet of residential structures, and that's what we have here. Those homes to the south are 80 feet away from the property, from this property. It's just too close. It's a conditional use, and that's why we have the hearing, is to look at, well, does it impact the neighbors? We believe lighting impacts the neighbors. They agreed to the condition of the fencing. We didn't want any of the balls or any litter that may occur on the site to get to the neighbors. They agreed to that condition, to the mesh, which creates a visual barrier to the properties to the south. The other conditions they've agreed to, additional parking needs to be provided, et cetera. The lighting is just one that staff feels very strongly about. And if the lighting was part of the initial request when we were reviewing it, we would have not recommended approval of the use at all. We would have said no, don't allow outdoor if lighting is a component of that. The neighbors that I spoke with, every one of them did not want to see outdoor lighting. They were okay with the use. They wanted to see the fence and containment of the trash. They did not want to see lighting. The only time that I heard any discussion of anybody being, if you would, in favor or okay with lighting was at the hearing when the HOA president spoke. Those comments are on the record. Again, all the residents I spoke with did not want to see the outdoor lighting. If a lighting plan is submitted, staff will absolutely review that plan according to our code and let you know, does it comply with the code or does it not? Absolutely, we would do that. But I just want to make it clear that it would not change staff recommendation. It certainly may change planning commission recommendation if they were to see the complete lighting plan. But again, I believe that based upon the discussion, 5 of the planning commission members, although they didn't see the details of the plan, said they did not want to see outdoor lighting. And that's the recommendation that's coming before you this evening. So with that, I'll conclude staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Cartwright. I appreciate your report. If this, put this aside, and this was not for rezoning, this is a M1 light industrial zoning?
That's correct.
What type of facilities can be built on that type of zoning?
The M1 is really a light manufacturing, so a clean manufacturing operation, warehousing, storage. All those uses would be permitted, a permitted right on the property.
What type of lighting would they require?
They'd be able to light the outside of the building, security purposes, be able to light the parking lot area as well. The standards that would have to be met for a permitted use, like a warehouse or manufacturing facility, the same standards that this use would have to comply with. This use is not exempted out of those standards, is not treated differently than the standards of a permitted use on the property.
So the 80-foot rule on the conditional use is specific to that, but not to the 80, it's a different variance or distance requirement for a M1 type of establishment.
And I didn't mean to refer to the 80-foot as being a minimum or standard requirement, just showing the proximity of the residential uses. The code standard is measuring foot candles at the property line. So trying to, again, as the applicant's engineer was talking, trying to contain the lighting to the site. That is what we would look at when we look at a lighting plan.
Ms. Abdelgawad.
So kind of a follow-up to Mr. Townsend's question. So the lights in the picture that they shared coming from the storage facility way far away could be lights placed on that property in current zoning that could potentially shine into that neighborhood? Is that what I heard you say?
Well, they could use similar lighting fixtures. The difference would be is that the lighting would have to be more contained to the property. Where the lights that they showed was an area completely shrouded by manufacturing uses. So the spillover effect isn't measured the same as it would be when you're adjacent to residential property. So on this particular site along Sunrise and J Highway, they would not be able to exceed 1 foot candle at that property line. I would venture to say that the example they gave, it exceeds 1 foot candle at the property line. But again, that example is okay. Here it's not, again, because you're much closer to the residential properties. Now, one other comment regarding the lighting. The difference also is, of course, the type of lighting and the brightness of the lighting really does depend. Are you lighting a parking lot or you're lighting a ball field? The intensity of lighting is quite a bit different than what is done. But the way we actually measure is at the property line, and there are limitations to the height of the fixtures as well. So what I saw in the plan that was submitted, I think the height of the fixtures actually exceeds the requirement as well. So those are the things we would need to look at if a lighting plan is submitted: type of fixture, height, and actual measurements at the property line.
Okay, anyone else? No one? The public hearing is open at this time. If anyone from the public would like to step forward, address the council on this particular issue, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Sure.
Todd Miller, address 7922 Noland Road, Lenexa, Kansas. Am a member of the business community in Raymore. Just one of the things that was mentioned in the staff review that I wanted to address, and I think we could put to rest right now from the perspective of the lighting from the fixtures and spillover into the residential property. Again, I think from modeling that we did, there is exactly a 0 foot candle impact, both horizontal and vertical surface at Sunrise Road. So the impact is 0 foot candles, not 1 foot candle or greater. So I just wanted to clarify that. The other thing was a discussion regarding the difference in nature of field lighting versus parking lot lighting, and I wanted to redirect that conversation back to the purpose of parking lot lighting is security, and it is to broadcast or floodlight in as wide an arc as possible. This lighting, again, is to have precision, to illuminate a football field with almost 0 foot candles spill over at the edge of the playing surface. And the purpose, again, is such that if you'll take by example, pole height, I think, came into this as well, and if that's If that's something that is by statute, then obviously it needs to conform to that. But if we take a light and put it on a pole vertically that is pointed now downwards, we're going to have a round pattern on the ground. If we take that same light and put it on a 4-foot pole and illuminate a field with it, we're now going to have a light shining directly in everybody's eyes. So the height of the pole is what gives us the ability to control the glare, the spill, and the sky glow. So the very thing that I think is a bit of a concern is what gives us the ability to control that light, and that's all I really had to add.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, hold on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Were you working on this at all before December 17th?
Absolutely not, no.
So when they presented this, they had not consulted you or?
No, they had not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to address the council?
Good evening, Tom Engert, President of the Morning View Homeowners Association and a resident of 613 Sun Drive here in Raymore. Speaking on behalf of the board and the Morning View residents, we are in favor of the original concept presented for Impact Fieldhouse, but we also share the same concerns that the City Council and the staff is bringing up concerning the lighting.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Tyler Lambert. I live at 606 Ronke Drive, however you want to pronounce it. I didn't come here tonight plan on saying anything, but I'm a young guy, plan on having lots of kids, and don't really plan on leaving Raymore. This is the kind of thing that would make me want to stay. And I see a lot of kickback on some of your guys' faces based on your comments that you might be against the lighting or the outdoor field altogether. I'm not sure, but if a lighting engineer can say at the property line we give you 0 impact across the street, and they can guarantee that, I don't see how that affects across the street. Like those pictures showed, you drive down 1,000 streets in town, a motion light kicks on right in your eyes while you're driving. If they can say that's not going to happen there, I don't understand why it's such a big deal.
Okay,
that's all I got.
Thank you.
Mike Myers, 903 Wesley Circle, Raymore, Missouri. First, I just want to say, as a parent of 7 children who spent numerous winter nights with young kids trapped inside, the thought of something like this, where I can take my children to, number 1, be active, and number 2 is participate in something that's, making them better athletes for this town. I'm super excited about it. And the outdoor piece, I think, is a huge part of it. I know that we're really talking about the outdoor piece today, so I just want to offer my absolute endorsement for them. But more importantly, what I want to talk about very quickly is, Mike Chick and I both served our country. I did 27 years, he did 20 years. We served together for our a couple years back in 2012 or so. He was a Navy corpsman, saved lives. I saw in him, the kind of person that is dedicated to the people around him, is dedicated to the youth that were around us then, and now a different kind of youth. So I know that he's got the professional capability, that this is not about their business proposal. This is about making this town better and making the athletes in this town better, whether they be young athletes or old athletes. I wish I could get out there, but so I know that he's got that professional ability that, if we're talking about lighting, like, he's going to do what it takes to make sure that this works out for everybody. And then, he's the kind of guy of a character, honor, courage, commitment. I mean, those are the kinds of things, like, he and I we both moved to this town. We picked this town to settle in.
Like, we could have chosen anywhere in the country, and I could have. I've been across this country multiple times. I chose this town, and he chose this town, because we want to make this place as good as we can. And I think, you know, his honor, courage, and commitment, and the fact that he signed up with this team, I mean, I don't know the team, but I know that if he's part of the team, they're as good as he is, and they're committed to making this thing right for everybody around us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, we need you at the microphone, sorry. Well, we've got a portable mic. Well, come on up, all right.
Thank you. Candy Ingert, 613 Sun Drive in Morning View. I just would like to see 3 more things clarified, more information. One is the traffic impact on J. We keep talking about Morning View. I'm not hearing a traffic impact on J or the lighting impact on J. I think I'm hearing that no, it will not present a problem to people traveling on J. It is very close to the highway. So the other thing is, are we talking about this is for youth or for youth and adult? If it's for youth, we don't have the potential for a parking problem. People come, they drop their kids off, they leave. If you're talking adult and having adult games outside, you have a parking problem. You will not have enough parking with 34 places. So I'm not seeing that in the plan. So if day one, you're going to offer both outdoor and indoor to youth and to adult, I don't see enough in the plans for parking.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I would remind everybody, this is a conditional use permit application for the soccer fields outside. I think the plan is we're all good with the indoor work that's going to be done. We're considering the outdoor soccer field, and now under contention is the lighting issue. So it's merely that. If anyone else would like to come and speak to the council, please kind of focus on that particular issue.
Justin Unruh, 21616.
Oh, and that conditional use permit, period.
South Countryside Drive, Peculiar, Missouri. I've lived in North Cass County basically my whole life. Grew up here. Now have 2 kids of my own, which I struggle with what a lot of parents do these days, which is screen time. Screen time with your kids is so difficult now. To get them to go outside, it's difficult, especially in the cold weather, which you see the benefit of the indoors. But the outdoors, the fact that they may not even do this because they can't provide lighting. I've been a volunteer coach for about 8 years now here, and it is a struggle, especially that first couple weeks in spring before daylight savings. It's dark at 5 o'clock, 5:30. So when you've got to ask parents to start practice at 4:30 when most of them aren't even off work, it's almost impossible. This provides a solution for that, and the fact that it may not happen at all, the indoor or outdoor, because of a lighting issue that may some other day become another storage unit, just like you see north of there with much brighter lights. I don't see why you would not want this in your community. It's good for your youth. It's good for around business. It's good for everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Carol Cable, 525 Mars Court in Morning View. I don't think anybody in the housing area there doesn't see a need for something for our kids and youth. I mean, we all love kids. My question is the choice of location. I don't know. I mean, I realize this is kind of a whole different ballgame, no pun intended, but I don't understand why they would choose a retirement community where this thing is retirement community totally surrounded on 2 sides for something like this. To me, it's not even the lighting issue. I hadn't heard anything whether noise pollution was addressed, next to a retirement community. I haven't heard anything about the fact that I did hear that it would increase property values. Not in Morning View. Who wants to buy a retirement home right across from a noisy, lighted ballpark? And again, I'm not disputing the fact that it's probably needed. I just wish they could find a better location.
Okay, ma'am.
And, we have, to address the veteran issue, I think we've probably got a higher percentage of veterans who have served in that area than in most areas.
All right, thank you. Got one coming from the right and one coming from the left here.
Nicole Wobe, 1119 Bristol Drive. Currently, my son does play soccer. He is a junior at Ray-Pec High School. I drive to Merriam, Kansas 4 times a week for my son to practice in a facility similar to this. I'm sorry, I get emotional. So something like this is a dream come true for parents like me who spend a lot of time, 45 minutes, driving my son to practice, staying in Merriam because it's too far for me to drive back to Raymore, and then spending my money out there as well. Like, if I have shopping to do while he's practicing, I will go to the grocery store, I'll go to Walmart, I'll go to Target. I'm spending my revenue somewhere else because there's no such thing as a practice space such as this here locally. I know that you're wanting to talk about the lighting specifically and the conditional use permit. This type of facility, to kind of address the prior person speaker's concern, is that it's already a structure that's built. So I know that that's a lot easier for them to find something that's already built than to build it yourself. It's a lot more expensive, and it takes a lot more time and use and whatnot. Anyway, I just want to say I'm for it. I understand the concern about the lighting. I was at the last meeting as well, so I do see a lot of new faces on this particular council versus the last one. And I wouldn't say that it was a unanimous vote to not do lighting. Lighting came up. There was a lot of discussion about it, and then there was a motion to accept the lighting, and then there's a couple of people who said, I'm not really sure if I can go from 0 to 100 right now, come back and produce a lighting, idea, and we would revisit it. I don't think it was necessarily a vote on an all or nothing kind of situation. It was like, hey, we'll address this next time. You can come back to the next city council and we'll bring it. I don't remember them ever stating that they needed to have that lighting concept before the actual meeting took place. As far as I know, that it was something that was going to be addressed at this particular meeting. So I don't believe that it was conditional, that it was nowhere was it stated that, hey, we need you to submit a report or an idea prior to the next meeting for them. But I just wanted to let you know that I was here. I did hear about all of those concerns and things like that, and Ms. Abdigawad, I'm sorry. She brought up some of the minutes that it seemed like I'm not sure if all of you get those same minutes or were reading over it or whatnot, but she came through with some details that I don't know if everybody was looking at about that particular meeting, but I just wanted to kind of clarify that it wasn't just unanimously no. There were some people that were in favor. The HOA president came up. They kind of said it's 9 o'clock, a decent thing. And I do have one question: what is the noise ordinance time period for Raymore? Do we have what's the time limit on noise ordinance?
We can look it up. I think
11 o'clock on weeknights.
Yeah.
So my point is that, most of this if the lights are going off at 9, the noise is going off at 9 as well. So to me, that seems like a non-issue, but that's just my own opinion. So
Okay.
All right, I'm trying to keep this short, sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kay Sharp. I live at 516 Neptune, 4 houses up from Sunrise, and I am the treasurer for the HOA. When the kids practiced down there before, there's no noise level. That's not even a contention. And for retired people, some of the best times that you have is with children. That's a very good thing to have around senior citizens. I hate to call myself that, but so the biggest concern would be parking. If the guy that's the lighting guy does what he says he can do, then I don't see a problem with lighting, as long as it's turned off at 9 o'clock or someplace around in there. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. And this is a time where I am obligated to tell folks, let's not hear the same story over and over.
No.
If you got something to add, do that. But if you're for it, say you're for it. If you're against it, say you're against it, okay?
Hi, my name is Brisa Boyer, and I live at 810 Cindy Lane. I am HR consultant in the light industrial manufacturing industry, and talking about lighting, I work in a lot of facilities where the light has to stay on 24/7 at night due to security purposes. So having this lighting being turned off, when it's not in use, I think is a lot better than having an industrial light manufacturing location. And I live in the city and I have 3 boys, and I think they would really benefit from something like that. So having the lights if you have a facility due to security, they have to keep the lights on. I currently live, like I said, on Cindy Lane, and thanks to a street opening up, my house got broken into, and thanks for now new lighting, now in the open field and a new street, a lot of people think about it twice before they commit a crime too. So I think lighting, being able to turn on and off the lights is a lot better than having an industrial, and the community will benefit from it. Adults, children, and everybody else.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Alex Nunez, 1374 Harvest Lane, Peculiar. And I just want to say, soccer sport for me is discipline, provides discipline to the boys or girls, whoever practices. Also provide a lot of exercise, and a lot of sociability with our kids. I have 4 little boys, and they all play soccer. When I heard about this place coming up, possible, I was like, yes, because it's so close in our area. My older boys, he play competitive, and I had to move him to. He played 2 years here in Ray Pack soccer, but then I had to end up moving him to Blue Valley because his skills. He's plays very well, so I don't have a choice than moving him where he can play more competitive, and it's worth it for me because the sacrifice I do to drive and practice and very skill level. But if we can have something like this, it'd be great here in Raymore. My understanding is this facility is just for training. Is that correct? Because I heard some concernings about noise. And usually training, noising is a little different than game noising, because you have those parents, they kind of get emotionally with the game. So training is more, realistically, is more quiet. The reason I say that is because I take my boy to a shelf 3 times a week, and there's no noise at all when they practice, except that the coach telling instruction. Against when we go to the tournaments or we go to the games, it's totally more noise compared as a practice. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you.
Jacob Smith, 608 Ronke Drive, Raymore. I'm 17 and I'm a junior at Ray Peck High School, and I go to Summit Tech and I'm in dual credit classes. By the time I get done with homework from school, it's 6:37 sometimes, and I practice 35 minutes away from my house. Having something this close to me it's a miracle. And
So it sounds like you're for it.
yeah, definitely.
I understand.
And just seeing my parents put in the time just so I can play.
And passionate about it too. I understand. It's okay. We're just talking about the special use permit for the lighting on the potential field. The facility's coming, right, Mike? Facility's coming, right? Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just when you think about it, one thing shouldn't mean that much, but means the world to a lot of people.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Doug Garrison, 13810 Harvest Lane, Peculiar. I've heard about the community. I'm part of that soccer community. I just wanted to reiterate the minimal impact of the lights. I am for it. Being a 9 o'clock shut off, again, will be minimal. Also, it was said earlier, 12 weeks of the year. That's also a very minimal time for this to happen. During the summer when the light's out, obviously sunlight will be the main focus there. You won't need them on as long. So I just wanted to reiterate that and make sure everyone realizes 12 weeks. It's very small.
Okay, thank you.
Denise Scott, 206 Alyssa Drive. I once lived in a house where, because of zoning, they were able to build a car wash right next to me. And it had a huge bright light that shined right into my bedroom window. And then there was, when a car wash, it's almost done. It does this beep, beep, beep. So that's what I got to listen to all the time and every night and every morning while I was sleeping. So talk about obnoxious. Anyway, I guess my point to that story is there's always going to be, many people that benefit from something, and then there's probably going to be people that are not so happy about something. But, the guy that built that car wash was a real jerk. He wouldn't even listen or do anything to kind of make it a little better, point the light a different way, or do different lighting that maybe made it a little better. But you've got a group of people who are awesome. I mean, my son plays for these guys, and he absolutely loves them, and you couldn't ask for better people. So they are willing to do whatever to make it, the lighting as best they can, and to me it looks like it's going to be as little impact. It is just training and practices. It's not games. I think the noise is going to be minimal. So I feel like we could make this happen and make it, little impact to these wonderful people too, and it would be a great thing for our community. So
okay,
maybe we could give it a try.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Brian Smith, 608 Ronke Drive. I am one of the members and founders of Impact Fieldhouse. I just want to bring this back full circle real quick. We spent a lot of time and effort to come up with something really good for the community. This item of the lighting was presented to us. These 8 stipulations were presented to us just days, literally on a Friday before a Tuesday meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's the amount of time that we had to even prepare to address the stipulations that were presented to us. During that meeting, the item of the lighting is definitely a key focus that we need for the facility to operate in our vision. We do not want to approve this without the lighting, and I'll be extremely clear to your question earlier. The project hinges on having lighting on that outside field. So we were given the marching orders, if you will, to come up with a plan, present it to you tonight. There was really some unsure speak as to really what this process was from this point forward, whether or not you guys were going to send it back to them if you weren't sure about things. And there was really some confusion in that discussion. We felt that we could come up with an amicable solution for the lighting aspect of these 8 stipulations, that we can address the concerns of the residents and the needs of the operation. And I think we've done that for you. But I just felt the need to come up and make sure we are not in any gray area or unsure about how we're going to proceed with this. The lighting on this field is a must, and that's really all I have to
Mr. Smith,
say.
since you're an applicant, was the lighting part of your original application for the special use permit?
I will let Mike speak to that. Mike.
Well, I would think as they submit their application, that's what they have to review at the staff level.
In my conversation with Mr. Carteret, that's not a normal part of this process. Is that correct?
Lighting plans are not a normal part of a conditional use permit request. Lighting plans are usually part of a site plan request. But it was not, lighting was not part of the initial application request and the discussions that staff had with the applicant.
Yeah, based on the zoning that it currently is, it does not allow for the outdoor recreational space. Although it has been used for that in the past, just they would rather deal with whatever consequences come with it. We were trying to be upfront and honest on how we intend to use the property. We need to use the outdoor space for practicing as well. And again, this is a training facility. As it's been said numerous times, the noise isn't going to be an issue. It's going to be coaches giving directions, not kids running around. We want our kids to be proud of what they have there. We're going to keep this facility clean. It's going to be something you can be proud of as a citizen here in Raymore. So, again.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could, yeah, you can come on up to the podium there. You're the applicant. So I got another question, and since I was at the Planning and Zoning meeting and one of the voting members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'd like to ask Mr. Zer to refresh my memory for me if you have your notes there with you. So Mr. Smith, who was just at the podium, you turned to at one point, because I'm sitting where Mr. Circo is sitting right now, and asked him about the 8 conditions of the permit. Were they good with them? At that time, it appeared that there was an affirmative answer to that. And then a short time later, Mr. Smith came before us, the commission, and mentioned that there was an issue with item number 4. At that time, that's the first time any of us had heard about potential lighting as part of the field special use permit.
Mayor, I believe that the public record and the hearing notes would identify that there was an issue on the public record. I don't believe that my conversation with him was made a part of the public record. I did inquire of him as to whether they were good with the proposed conditions. The initial response to me was that they were, but that was not made a part of the public record. The first time they did was when they came forward shortly thereafter, and I would note it was shortly thereafter.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer clarification. The question came up about whether or not, it's come up a few times, whether or not we included lighting in the conditional use permit application. And I was part of that initial application alongside Mike, and we did not, but only because it was an oversight. It wasn't intentionally left out to be disputed later. I just want to let you know this project is just a high volume of information, and it's all moving very quickly. It was just an honest oversight. So that's,
Okay.
that's just a clarification.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else have anything at this time? Anything else, Mr. Carteret, to add before I close the public hearing?
I do not have anything, sir.
Okay. I will close the public hearing at this time, and I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman.
I move that we approve Bill 3520, Impact Fieldhouse Conditional Use Permit with the 8 conditions as presented and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve Bill 3520. Is there any discussion? Ms. Abdel, go ahead. Oh, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for the record, I was a coach at Ray Peck when we tried to get lights on the field out there, and I've coached at 3 different schools for about 15 seasons, and the last time Ray Peck won a district championship, I was the assistant. But I also was a groundskeeper at MU for 3 years for the athletic department, and the thing that makes me want, I do want to approve this with the 8 conditions, but the lighting aspect of this was not presented in a report to us. I was not allowed to do any research, which I would have. Everyone that knows me here knows I spend an inordinate amount of time looking at soccer. I love soccer. I think this would be awesome. But I also wouldn't want to live next door and have a bunch of lights coming in my windows. And these are retirement villages, do have a lot of need for real estate turnover. So I support the motion as stated.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Abdel, go ahead. Did you have anything?
I was just questioning, since we do have 2 reads on a bill, should we give them the opportunity to at least show staff the lighting plan before we recommend this without lighting at all? We kind of discussed that a little bit earlier, that maybe whether we give it back to P&Z, whether we ask staff to look at that lighting plan. In my opinion, it seems fair to at least take a look at the lighting plan that was recommended of the applicants in the P&Z meeting before we nix the lighting altogether, because it seems like, I know from going to the Morning View meeting, these are 3 guys that are not experienced in the business of creating a soccer complex like this. These are 3 men, 3 families in our community. These are Raymore families who want to better the community. They want to do things for their own children, for their own families, for families they work and live with here in Raymore. They saw a need for something that, in talking to them, really coming from their hearts and not their pocketbook, a need in the community they wanted to fill. And so I feel like because they're getting started in this business, this is kind of their first go around with this, we should give them a little bit of grace and at least give them an opportunity to show us their lighting plan that they've worked on with their consultant before we completely nix that opportunity for them.
Okay. Well, I don't know how the motion is nixing the opportunity other than not having lighting included in it, although Mr. Smith did say that was a deal killer.
Right, and that's how I feel like it's nixing the opportunity. If they feel like they're not going to be able to have a successful business here without that, and they worked on the plan, I feel like we could at least look at their plan. So by possibly amending the motion to say, can we put in pending staff review, pending staff and council review of their lighting plan? Or I guess, is that something we could amend next time and just ask them to provide us with that lighting plan for consideration for our next meeting? What would staff guidance be on that?
As you had indicated, this is first read. To keep the process moving, I hate to use the word compromise, but did hear 2 things from the applicant. One is they'd just like to know, from the standpoint of a pending contract, that at least the conditional use permit for outdoor use was being approved with whatever conditions, but then at the end we heard that it's a go, no-go concerning the lighting. To get through this evening, staff might suggest to the council that you approve it with the motion that is there, with the understanding, of course, that at any point in time, the applicant can always come forward before second read with additional information, in this case a lighting plan, and or withdraw the application entirely if it's just not going to work. So they could address either one of those statements made by the applicant if you just kind of proceed with the first step as was recommended to you all by P&Z, because they would still be allowed with no amendment to the motion to do either one of those items.
Anyone wish to, Mr. Barber, did you have any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I do appreciate entrepreneurship. I have children myself. I understand there's a need for this, and I think the need's going to get greater. I understand this is a business as well, and there's procedures and policies and things you have to do in business. And one of the reasons that I'm going ahead and recommend what we have here, and then whatever we decide to do, or if there's more of us decide to do that, to take another look at the lighting, it's very, very important that anything you do, if this continues and goes forward, that staff is, no surprises to staff. It's brought to staff, gone through, they're the experts, we're the policymakers. They know what the ordinance are, what you can do and what you can't do. And I was a little blindsided by this.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add my comments to this, I appreciate, and I've made comments several times on asking our own Economic Development Department, how are we engaged in our community to see what individuals in our community wants to create businesses here, whether it be existing or, as we have tonight, individuals coming forward with a plan, or they have plans in place to establish a business here that meets a need. But now we have a conditional permit here, rezoning for some lighting, which is of contention. And on that specific point, we've gone through a significant effort to review our city codes and ordinance to make sure that they are current and they're applicable to the rules and laws that govern us. And staff has done, and as well as us, reviewing that to make sure it's applicable. And here we have staff giving us recommendations based on that code that this would impact or violate that in some condition. And it's been said that should this move somewhere else in another location within the city that meets the footprint, to allow them to have this conditional release, to have this type of facility with outdoor lighting somewhere else that had a similar proximity to other residents, not necessarily a senior living community or just another residential community in general, certainly probably would still have the same conditional permit requirements as far as lighting issues. So whether it's here at the corner of J and Sunset or whether it's somewhere else, I'm certainly probably have the same rules when it comes to the conditional release approval. I am all for the business. It meets a need. It's been a need for several years. There's been conversations about this type of entity in other locations of larger scale, but we have 3 individuals of our community who have formed an entity to answer a need. And I applaud them for that. And I applaud you to move forward in every aspect, because it sounds like you have a large contingent of individuals outside the city limits of Raymore that would benefit from this. And probably have opportunities for you to expand beyond this footprint to somewhere else, hopefully within our city limits, as opportunity exists. So whatever the vote is tonight, I just want to say that our codes is there for a reason. Our Morning View residents are asking us to honor that code that we put in place, and other areas of our community also are asking us to honor that code. And when we have conditional releases that come before us, that we weigh those the discussions heavily. But whatever the decision, whatever the vote is for the business owners that are looking to move forward and they're on the fence on what this will do to the future of the business, continue, because you obviously have a following. There's a need beyond the less than 100 people in this room that have a concern, all right in their own aspects, but there is opportunities there, no matter however this comes out in this vote. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Serco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, following up with you guys, I understand the applicants, and I've heard both sides, and I like what Mr. Fearborn said, that we can open the door to this tonight, but it's just open. They will have an opportunity maybe to bring the lighting back to the staff. They have an opportunity, if they felt necessary, they could back out that they could not actually make this work because they're going to invest a lot of time and a lot of money. I understand that. I built a few businesses on my own in the past, so I understand what it takes. But at least if we give them that open avenue by opening the door, then they can bring it back, and if it doesn't work and it fails, then they would have the opportunity to say yay or nay to the situation, which I'm fine with.
Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, again, I'd like to thank the applicants for coming in and doing this tonight. When I think of all the options for this property being zoned M1, you know, we're fortunate that Russell Karting was the great business that it was. They've always taken care of their property. They've allowed kids to play soccer on that field for a number of years. Whether or not it was permitted, I'm not concerned about that right now. But I'm happy that the applicants put this application in. I think in my mind, this is probably best case scenario for our community. I think it's outstanding. I would encourage them to please get with our city staff and present that lighting plan. I'd like to hear more about it and learn more about it. And hopefully that's something that we can continue having a conversation about and see if we can find a resolution on that. So again, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming tonight, and look forward to working with you more in the future.
Anyone else? Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of remain quiet this evening to listen to all sides talk and hear what everybody had to say, and it was very, very interesting. First of all, my thanks to all of you for being here and presenting yourselves very eloquently, very civilly, because sometimes these things can get a little bit heated. I thought both sides presented their cases very well, spoke very well. In fact, I didn't hear anybody really say that they were against this project in any of the conversations. I never heard that. I'm going to vote for the motion as presented. I will say I'm very interested in seeing us move forward and taking a look at the lighting myself. I was on the council when we voted for the Galleria. Those lights are pretty close to Fox Haven. I was here when we voted for the lights at Rec Park. Those lights are pretty close to residential. We just voted for lights at Hawk Park, which are also very close. And if we feel that those lights can be contained, it seems to me like we can find a way to take at least a look and see what they have to say. I'm not saying it can be. As far as our codes go, we have protocols in place for variances, that sort of thing, where people can appeal. I am, like the rest of the council members, I was caught a little bit off guard this evening, and I think that's probably the main concern tonight was, as Councilman Burke said, no opportunity to do research, no opportunity to talk with staff individually perhaps, but I would encourage the applicant to discuss with staff. I thought Mr. Fearborn's suggestion was excellent. I'm always looking for a win-win where we can get it. So I will vote for this, but I would like to see us discuss with the applicant the lighting situation.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, so the motion on the floor is to adopt Bill 35, excuse me, I took my glasses off here, to adopt Bill 3520, which is includes the 8 conditions as established by staff and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3521 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3521 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2020 operating and internal services budgets.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. City staff has made several recommendations for budget amendments in the buildings and grounds and court departments to improve building security, the police department to increase administrative assistant hours to allow for evening customer service, and the restricted revenue fund for the purchase of skates to be rented for the new ice rink. Finally, amending the personnel sections of the budget for the creation of a Public Works Worker 3 position. Those budget amendments include, in dollar amounts, in the general fund, originally buildings and grounds originally budgeted for $378,948, an increase of $7,750. In the general fund, court department originally budgeted $139,464, budget change increase of $5,600. In the general fund, police department, original budget $3,949,141, increased by $32,433. A reminder to the council that that is a highly conservative amount because it would include a future individual who was taking benefits. The individual who we're increasing does not currently take benefits. Restricted revenue fund, originally budgeted $16,480. Budget increase in that fund for the purchase of the skates of $8,750. All of these in the fiscal year 2020 budget. That concludes staff report on this agenda item, sir.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? As you know, we discussed this infinitum at the work session last, and I would go ahead and entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman.
I move that we approve Bill 3521, amending the fiscal year 2020 budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3521. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. The next item on our agenda is the annual meeting of the Raymore Community Foundation. I would entertain a motion for a recess from the regular council meeting in order for us to go in to the foundation meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman.
I move that we take a temporary recess of this city council meeting and move into the annual meeting of the Raymore Community Foundation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion has been made and seconded to move into a recess of the regular council meeting in order to facilitate the annual meeting of the Raymore Community Foundation. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Come on, pen. We'll now call to order the Raymore Community Foundation meeting for January the 13th. Can I please have the roll call?
Director Abdelgawad.
Here.
Director Barber.
Present.
Director Berenson.
Present.
Director Burke.
Present.
Director Serco.
Present.
Director Holman.
Present.
Director Jacobson.
Present.
Director Townsend.
Present.
Director Turnbow.
Present. Next item on this agenda is the approval of the minutes of the July 8th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman.
I move that we approve the January 8th, 2019 minutes.
July
I'm
8th.
sorry, July.
That's okay.
July 2019 minutes of the Raymore Community Foundation.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the July 8th meeting minutes of the Raymore Community Foundation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item under new business is election of officers. Could I please have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will ask Mr. Icky stand-in, Mr. Zur, to fill in on this particular agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Annually, you are to, as a board for the Raymore Community Foundation, vote to adopt your current officers. At this time, the bylaws for the Community Foundation indicate that Mayor Turnbow, you would serve as the president for the organization. Beneath that, we would have a vice presidential position, a secretary, and a treasurer, each of whom would need to be elected by this board. That would conclude staff report. I'm happy to help facilitate that vote.
I would move on with that. The mayor does not actually, the mayor/president, by virtue of being the mayor, does not have to actually be a part of what the board is about to do. Traditionally, the mayor pro tem has held the position of vice chairman. The board member Abdelgawad has been selected to be the secretary for the board for, I believe, the last several years, and finance director Elisa Williams has been selected by the board to be the treasurer. The board could either accept individual nominations for those positions, or you could nominate them as a slate.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Holman.
I'll move that we approve the slate of directors for the upcoming term as announced by Mr. Fearborn.
Okay.
which would include yourself as president, myself as vice president, Councilmember Dugglewad as treasurer, I believe, and Elisa Williams, I'm sorry, secretary, and Elisa Williams as treasurer.
Correct. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to adopt by acclamation the present members that are seated in those positions. I would ask for any discussion at this time. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Are there any other items to bring before the board at this time? The foundation?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right. Before we move into adjournment, I wanted to ask. Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn from the Raymore Community Foundation annual meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holmes.
Mr. President, I'm sorry. I would move that this time that we adjourn the Raymore Community Foundation board meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion's been made and seconded to move into adjournment. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. I would entertain a motion to go back into regular session of the Raymore City Council regular meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman.
I move that we return to our regular city council meeting of the evening.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion's been made and seconded to return to the regular council meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We'll now resume, and the next item on our minutes is public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. If there are none, I'll move into mayor-council communication. Who's not gone first lately? Mr. Burke, have you not gone first lately? Throw it out there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the only comments I have are wanted to give kudos to our street public works crews out there taking care of the streets. I sent a picture to Mr. Fairborn text Saturday sometime, and the only road that on like the MoDOT website that was a highway that was not blue or purple or red or some crazy color was from 58 from our border to our other border, and then the rest of 58 was a mess according to them. So apparently they did a nice job, and we went to school today and everything was fine. Thanks.
Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, not much to say. I do want to thank the chief for your report. It's always important that kind of reports come to the city, and you guys are doing a fantastic job. Again, I did the ride along a few weeks ago, and I was totally blown away by the way our officers are trained, how expert they are on everything they do. They are so precise. They absorb so much understanding, intelligence, and information from when they're on patrol. We're very well protected. They do go out, drive around. They look for garage doors up at night. They want to make sure people are safe, and I mean, it's really important to them. Thank you for all you do in our police department, and of course, that's why you got 100% approval from the city. You guys do a great, and that's important. Thanks to city staff. You guys done a great job. This has been a long night. Put a lot together here, and I thank for all the work and stuff you do. You do a fantastic job, all of you. And our council here, they did a great job. A lot of listening tonight, a lot of questions, and we got through it. And I thank you all for that.
Thank you, sir. By the way, you looked good on KCTV5 yesterday. Gave that good interview there before the game. Tailgating strong there. Mr. Holman.
I'll yield my time to you and the remaining members of the council, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems like she was introduced yesterday, but I know it's the early part of our meeting, but I wanted to welcome Katie, our new city planner, and I know you'll do a great job. I have a Katie, a Catherine, so if I forget your name, that'll be horrible. But that's really all I had to say. I did want to make a comment about Councilman Circo being on TV. I was a little disappointed he didn't have his Raymore shirt on. He had this, he had a Chiefs shirt on, so interesting. So, Tom, I guess you're going back, I hope, so they'll win the next game. All right, good.
We're locked in.
We're all locked in.
Mr. Delgado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll echo the thanks to the chief for the good report. It's always great to hear that our crime stats are dropping. People in Raymore feel safe, but now we have even better reason to feel safe. Mr. Catterall, you talked about housing numbers being down and that sort of thing in your report today, but if I'm correct, our numbers are still increasing a little faster than most of the surrounding communities. So even though those numbers are down, they're down across the metro. Mr. Barber asked that question, but our numbers are still higher than a lot of other places. So I think that's something to be proud of. It's kind of slowing down everywhere, but we're still growing. The guys from Impact Fieldhouse, thank you guys for being here. Your very thorough presentation. As I said before, I think it's exciting that people from our community want to make the community better, want to build a business here, do things great for families and for the community. So kind like Mr. Townsend said, just keep asking questions, keep plugging along. It's a pretty complicated process, the planning and zoning and then the council meeting and all the paperwork you have to do. Just don't be afraid to ask questions and keep at it. I think you guys are doing good work. And hopefully you'll keep it here in Raymore. I want to thank everyone who is here tonight, even though lots of people left. Community involvement is what we are here for. That's what makes this process work. That's what makes our city great. If people don't tell us, lots of times we hear things behind the scenes about how you're feeling, what you're thinking about things coming to town or happening in the community, then we can rely on our own ideas and opinions, but what we're here for really is to be the voice of the people. And so it's always really exciting to walk into this room and see it full, and then to see the people in those seats coming up to voice their opinions, because that's what government in this country is about. And finally, as Mr. Barber said, welcome, Katie. This is a great place to live and work, and I hope you enjoy working here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of great comments up here tonight, so thank you all, and I agree with all of them. I'll take a kind of a different turn here. Saturday, I had the opportunity to go watch with my wife and kids and I the procession that went through Raymore when firefighter Chuck McCormick was laid to rest in Lee Summit and was transported through our town. If anybody had the opportunity to see that, it was an amazing thing to watch. All the other jurisdictions. I lost count of the fire trucks and EMS vehicles, and a very, very powerful thing to see. Mr. McCormick must have had a lot of friends, and it was amazing to see that profession and how professional and how caring they are. I also want to thank the city of Raymore. I know we did a lot of preparation for that and in clearing the roads. Pretty impressive to see the snowplows running 4 deep up and down the road and clearing that. So, and I think we helped out some other jurisdictions as well. Is that true, sir?
I was going to actually ask for permission to talk in front of the mayor. So proud of our people. The mayor and I received an email from the transportation group that handles these for the state of Missouri. Cannot tell you the number of people, so many of our officers volunteering to come in. It was bitter cold. Our public works guys, little known fact, we actually went up because the family was worried about being able to get out of their home, which is off of Prairie. So we actually plowed and salted so that the family cars associated with the funeral procession could pick them up at the house and get them all the way out to 291. Our public works guys thought that perhaps we could do a little bit better job at the intersection and on the 291 stretch. So they were hitting it, as well as MoDOT coming in and volunteering to serve with us on that. But to see our officers out there ahead of time and down in the squad room, and the amount of prep time that went into that so that we could serve not only this individual and his family here in Raymore, but outside of our jurisdiction, to make sure everything went smooth, and on a situation that could have been where you're trying to provide dignity and what this fallen firefighter deserves, and not have something go wrong. Hundreds of hours went into this on behalf of our people. Could not be more proud to be able to serve with our officers and our public works people who served on this detail. It was incredible.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. I appreciate that again. It was the most humbling thing I'd seen in a long time, and I was immensely, immensely proud to be a part of this community after seeing that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I will make my comments real brief. I've spoken a lot tonight, and that's enough. But I will just end it with, I appreciate the comments of Mr. Fairborn and for Mr. Behringer bringing it up with regards to the honors that was rendered to our fallen firefighter, and just the outpouring of support from the community and the staff as a whole, and preparations for that, and Chief, and the updates, and just everyone involved with regard to that really goes and shows and highlighted Raymore as a community and surrounding community, as the businesses that are coming in, the gentleman who says he wants to live here, he's going to stay here, those who chose to live here like myself, who retired here. All those things together helps as a community, as we serve on this council here, as our volunteers on P&Z and all the other boards that have the best interests of the community at heart, not individuals, but community, the community as a whole in their mind's eye, to make it better for not only the current residents, but those who comes after us. So again, thank you to staff and everybody who supports to make this community what it is.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll also be brief. First of all, also thank you, Katie, for joining us. It's always nice to have fresh eyes. Someone coming in from the outside maybe have some great fresh ideas for us. Not that these guys don't have great ideas as it is, but you can always look at some other ways. Chief, amazing report on the crime being overall. Thank you for all of your work that you do. Mr. Cataret, the commercial development beginning, that was quite a list. That's very impressive, and I want to thank you for that as well. I was not here for the procession. I would like to have been in town to see that. Our first responders are, I guess the popular term in the military is boots on the ground, and they are the boots on the ground here, and oftentimes we take that for granted. I also want to comment or thank staff, Mr. Fairborn, Chief, all of you. I believe that particular fire was where the mobile command unit was dispatched, and I really think, having had a chance to see that at our last work session, that is a real shining star for this staff and for this city. That was very impressive, and who knows, maybe things could have been far worse if you guys hadn't been there to help out. So thanks to our staff and our police force and everyone else involved in that. That's it, sir. Thank you,
sir. Well, if I could hit rerun on what Mr. Townsend said earlier under the topic of the project there with Impact Fieldhouse, I would say ditto on all of that, Mike, and I hope you guys move forward with that. I know that there is a need in our community. It appears that there's extremely a positive atmosphere from the dais up here to make sure that you guys succeed, and we appreciate the investment that you all are putting into the community. I'm quite certain that something can be worked out and we can move forward and help you all move forward as well. So with that, I would like to say congratulations to Katie. We lost to Katie, but we gained to Katie. Katie left us from Parks and Rec. Nathan lost a good person over there, but I understand you bring us a great experience and an education, and we really welcome you and look forward to working with you. Chief, great report. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and your department tremendously. As you know, I have a special spot in my heart for you guys, so keep up the good work on that. And to our fallen firefighter, I served as police chief. I serve now as the chair of the Cass County Emergency Services Board. And we put into effect a great communication system. And as such, our people in dispatch stay in close contact with all of our first responders. And we dispatch for West Peculiar Fire. And even prior to him, to Chuck going there, I know our department went here at South Metro, as we dispatch for them as well. Our dispatchers and officers here got to know him and care for him. And when he left us to go to West Peculiar, that care carried over. And it was a tragic loss, especially the way it happened. And nobody really could do anything for him under those circumstances. It's an awful loss anytime we lose one of our own, even if they're just injured on duty. And as my fellow sailors in the audience, we'll wish him fair winds and following seas in heaven. And we wish the best for his family and continue to pray for them. And we continue to pray for our other first responders and dispatchers who were affected by this loss. With that, I'll go ahead and end my comments, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman.
I move that we adjourn this session of the Raymore City Council.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion been made and seconded for adjournment. Any discussion? All those in favor? We are adjourned unanimously.